Canada is currently located from north to south. It spans more than half the Northern Hemisphere. From east to west it stretches almost 4,700 miles across the 6 time zone. It's considered the second largest nation on Earth, but with 0.5% world's population. It's famous for multiple things like famous landmarks, historical wonders, delicious food, incredible culture, and all the outdoor exploration you could want. From city adventures in Quebec and Vancouver to the well-known Rocky Mountains, Canada has so many amazing destinations that it'll be hard to choose, but surely for the number of lakes, it has 2 million approximate. When we dig deep into the history of Canada, prior to 1870, it was known as the Northwestern Territory. The name has always been a description of the location of the territory. It's one of the ancient ones that too with the series of events and inhabiting demolishing tribes. Most ancient ones who populated the region and were known were Vikings, hardy people. Nevertheless, it appears that sporadic voyages to Markland for forages, timber, and trade with the locals could have lasted as long as 400 years. It's believed that even for Vikings it became hard to live in there due to climate change and harsh winters. They either succumbed to any diseases or migrated away. A bit forward, after half a decade in the late 15th century, an Italian explorer, John Cabot, who in 1497 sailed west from Bristol hoping to find a shorter route to Asia, a land believed to be rich in gold, spices, and other luxuries. After a month, he discovered a newfound land, today known as Newfoundland in Canada. In the early 16th century, more specifically 1534, the French arrived in the region. Jacques Cartier claimed the land for France. They inhabit the region, and after decades of diseases and scum of these settlements, Port Royal and Quebec were established successfully. The name Canada likely comes from the Huron-Iroquois word Canada, meaning village or settlement. In 1535, 2 Aboriginal youths told French explorer Jacques Cartier about the route to Canada. They were actually referring to the village of Stadacona, the site of the present-day city of Quebec. For lack of another name, Cartier used the word Canada to describe not only the village but the entire area controlled by its chief, Donnacona. The name was soon applied to a much larger area. Maps in 1547 designated everything north of the St. Lawrence River as Canada. Cartier also called the St. Lawrence River the Rivière du Canada, a name used until the early 1600s. By 1616, although the entire region was known as New France, the area along the Great River of Canada and the Gulf of St. Lawrence was still called Canada. Cartier explored the Gulf of St. Lawrence and claimed its shores for the French crown. Most probably this was the Sieur de Roberval, who replaced Cartier as the leader of the settlement. By the time of 1670, the English colonies were established with the new settlements in Newfoundland and south of Hudson Bay. The fur trappers like the English and French were interested in this region to make their destiny out of fur opportunities here. The core issue was that the French and British were not at peace together. They simply can't exist with each other. French did occupy massive territory near Hudson Bay. Soon a series of wars broke out between Spain, Dutch, and Germany. The Europeans allied with Dutch merchants and then with the English. After 72 years, the peace was negotiated under the Treaty of Westphalia. After this, the all-time span New France consists of many colonies, with Louisiana and Canada as the largest two. Plaisance and Acadia were obtained by the British Empire under the Treaty of Utrecht. France ceded Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, the Hudson Bay Territory, and the island of St. Kitts to Britain and promised to demolish the fortifications at Dunkirk, which had been used as a base for attacks on English and Dutch shipping in the year 1713. Soon within no time the colonies of the British Empire increased, and in such a number that they outnumbered French settlements. And once again the war started for the next 7 years. The 7 Years' War was the first global war, fought in Europe, India, and America, and at sea. In North America, imperial rivals Britain and France struggled for supremacy. In the United States, the conflict is known as the French and Indian War. Both the English and French empires sent their infantry to North America during the war, supported by the local militias and Indian tribes. French, who was fewer in number, only relied on its Indian ally and fought really the best with the British to stand out, but got besieged by the British. Later on, Quebec and Montreal through the French defeat in the war did fail to take over the capital in the treaty that led to finishing the war sooner after France ceded Canada to the British and Louisiana to Spain. Most of the coastal areas of North America were still unpopulated, with many of native tribes. Now fast forward to when America had a 3 million population of in its colonies. It invaded a successful rebellion against the British Crown. At that time had an 8 million population. After another decade, America attempted but failed to take down Quebec as it remained loyal to Great Britain. After the war, massive of the Royalists of the British migrated toward the north of Canada. In the initial of 19th century 1812 again several invasions were launched at each other by America and Britain. A treaty after the wars did create a formalized border between the two nations through Canadians who didn't want to join their American movements for self-rule. The Rebellion of 1837–38 led to the short-lived Republic of Canada under William Lloyd Mackenzie. In 1846 the Act of Union did joint Upper and Lower Canada by Robert Nelson. The disputed Oregon Territory was divided peacefully between Great Britain and America by giving Vancouver Island to Canada. Throughout the whole 19th century there was hype in the logging industry. This attracted a large size of immigration to Canada, which just in no time replaced fur traders. In 1867 British North America Act Constitution Act established Canada as self-governing democracy with Ottawa as its capital, and at the west, the Hudson Bay Company negotiated the sale of Rupert's Land to the newly formed Canadian government. The Métis people of mixed European, primarily French and Indian ancestry, was the massive population of the Winnipeg area of what now is Manitoba. In the 1980s, a gold rush with thousands of prospectors setting out to the Yukon region with hopes of getting rich. Some did, but massive not after several decades of ceased growth of population, large migration to the US. Canada's population increases sharply, which yields a good economy in the 20th century. During the First World War, Canada still was a dominion of the UK and sent a large sum of troops to fight in Europe and eventually faced massive killings. This leads to the desire to self-govern its own foreign affairs. And in 1931 British Parliament passed the Statute of Westminster, which acknowledged Canada's co-equal status with the United Kingdom. After both World Wars, Canada also faced a higher degree of unemployment and deep recession, but did cope really well to achieve a good status in no time. By the time of 1965, Canada adopted its current flag. In 1982, Parliament of the United Kingdom passed a bill to grant Canada to create its own constitution, and the new constitution abolished the hold of the British Parliament remnants. The current population of Canada is 36 million. It has a booming economy, more specifically the 10th largest in the world.